warming up right. I'm doing another one inside because I know I usually do my lives sat outside, but I don't know if you noticed, it's been a bit cold, hasn't it? It is warming up, but quite often before I do those lives, I'm already sat outside for like, I've already been out there for 30 minutes doing my journal and my reading or whatever, 30, 40 minutes. So sometimes I get cold. That's why I put that blanket there. Like, I know it looks like a granny blanket, but it's just because I get a bit cold. But anyway, back to the topic. That's why I'm inside. Let's talk about risks a little bit more, because taking risks, right, which I'm a big fan of taking risks, by the way, because I do think you should take risks just to get ahead in life. Stakes really matter, right? So in terms of the stakes on taking when you should and shouldn't take a risk, there's always times where you should never, there's certain things that you should never take a risk on, where the loss aversion thing that we talked about, the loss aversion, where you need in order to take a risk, you need the upside to be 1.5 to 2.5 times the downside. On average, most people need that upside to be 1.5 to 2.5 times the downside in order to take that risk. There are some situations, and what you should do generally is train yourself to make because what you're looking for is an asymmetrical upside, right, in order to make it worth taking the risk. So you don't want to be like flipping a coin 50-50, you know what I mean? I wouldn't, I mean, statistically, you're the same odds as doing nothing, right? And if it's a small, so this is where stakes matter. The smaller the stake, the more of a risk you can take. But there are certain things where the stakes are so high that you just can't afford to take a risk, unless it's just like crazy odds, right? So one of those things is, when are the stakes too high where you can't take a risk? Well, I would say on your life, number one. So yeah, you don't want to be taking risks on your life. And then there are some situations where you wouldn't take a risk in most cases, but you'll see here now. Another one is your house, right? So if you own a house, you generally wouldn't stake your house, risk your house, would you? Where you live, because we all need somewhere to live. So that is another one that no matter what happens, a lot of people, there are people that take big risks that then will say, put the house up as collateral against a business decision. And I think that can be done in certain situations where, yeah, you'll risk it. Yeah, cheers, Harvey. Yeah. So there are situations where you can, Me, You and Empire Strikes Back, I like that one. Yeah, so there are situations where you can sort of risk your house, but generally most people need that there as almost like a base, a base which they won't risk. But like I say, you definitely usually would not take risks on your life. There are situations where you are taking risks on your life, and that is just general life, like getting in a car, leaving the house, doing things like getting on an aeroplane. There's a small risk there, but it's so small that you wouldn't consider it risking your life. You are risking your safety to some extent, but generally, where the stakes are so high, you wouldn't take the risk no matter what. Where the stakes are tiny and there's not much at stake, let's say, really, really small thing like booking a hotel on a holiday. Is it that one or that one? It's like, fucking hell, does it really matter? Go, especially if you can get, when you book a holiday, like on one of these apps or whatever, if you can get a free cancellation, just do it, because you've got what you're looking for. If the decision gives you an easy out, then it's easy to do. So that's a real example. You got the massive extremes there. You got like choosing a hotel versus risking your life. You can see the situation why definitely stakes matter. So what you're staking really matters. So you always want to have the best situation is where you've got like a baseline. And I talked about this in I did a video on creating your fortress of solitude, which is like, your financial base or your kind of baseline of safety, whereas once you've got it, and that might be a certain level of income, a house, somewhere to live, all that kind of thing, that's there. Then you've got a little bit of extra money which you can afford to risk on, say, investments in crypto or something like this. That at that point, your risk is okay, because you're not risking your baseline. So everyone needs a baseline, right? And yeah, there's only there's only one. Thank you. Yeah, so everyone needs a baseline, right? But when is it a gamble, right? Because when I talk about risk, I'm not talking about gambling here now. I'm not talking about just going into something blind and just, risking some money. I would never do that. I think you should calculate absolutely everything. So even if the risks and the stakes are very high, and let's say you're going to put your house up, right? You're going to, on a business decision, you're going to put your house up. That is still okay if you've calculated everything and you're confident in your abilities, you've created a plan, you find it out, you know the steps, you know how long it could take, because one of the big issues is when you create a goal, it's quite normal for a lot of people to underestimate the amount of time it could take. Like the whole Murphy's Law thing. Most people do not realistically underestimate. Everything gets underestimated. They don't consider what could go wrong, right? And this is like, you'll see this in, like, I've talked about it a few times on videos. You'll see it in things like big infrastructure projects, like, when the government's involved, or these huge, like Crossrail and all the rest of it. Why do they always run over budget? It's because no one really estimates correctly. They sort of plan the project out without considering anything going wrong. It's like perfectly. If it all went right, it would cost X amount of billions, and then by the time they start, budget's blown, and not only is a budget doubled, it's like quadrupled or 10 times the budget, because no one plans for what could go wrong. And in real life, you should certainly consider looking at the average. So, like, an example is like, you're going to take a risk in starting a new business, right? You might look at it and go, oh, I'll have X amount of money in 6 months. And then you get there in 6 months and it takes you 2 years. What you should have done is looked at what is the average time it takes a business to get off the ground, right? Just look at the statistics. Statistics really matter. And then look at, say, statistically, what is the likelihood of this business succeeding? And it might be something like 1 in 7, right? And you might think, shit, 1 in 7? That means I'm likely to fail. That is a risk, right? And then that is where if you look at the stats, instead of thinking I'm fucking brilliant, nothing will ever go wrong with me, I know what I'm doing, which is nonsense. What you should properly do is look at the actual statistics, how long it takes to get, because each business takes a long time to get off the ground. And I know this from my own. And this is why in a lot of my videos, I always talk about having passion before you should start something, because if you're not passionate about it, you are not going to push through and be that 1 in 7, right? It will fail if you're not passionate, because you haven't got the passion and the grit to push through the tough times. Because doing something new like that, taking a big risk on, like jacking your job in and going for a business, is fucking huge, right? And most of them fail because people are not fully 2 feet in and committed. And really, it's like, you look at it and it is a big risk, and you might think, is it worth your time? Well, statistically, it's not, right? Statistically, it's not worth going for it, and you should not. Even if you really want that business, statistically, you're crazy. And that is the difference. That passionate, that grit, like those people that start those businesses, including myself, would have been better off doing something else, right? And the funny thing is, the irony is, when you get to the point where it has worked and you look back and you think, how hard were that? And why did I do them things and all the stuff that you've done to get there? Would you turn the clock back and go, that wasn't worth that sacrifice? No, because when you get there, you love it, right? So it's really weird, right? Even though it's not worth your time to take that risk, it kind of is in a way if you've got the passion for it. And when you do something like that, it is a bit of gambling, right? I say, don't say, create a really good plan so you're not gambling. Look at all the opportunities, look at the statistics of how likely it is to work out. It's like me, you know, writing books now. I'm not an author, right? I've just started. But I'm doing that because I've got my fortress of solitude. I've got my business, I've got my life. I have the time to take a risk and say, you know what, I'm going to do something I want to do out of passion, which is write books on certain topics, right? Even these videos, it's all a hobby, right? And I can do that because I've got my base, my fortress of solitude, which allows me to take risks on my time. I was just going to say about another thing you can't afford to, where the stakes matter so high, right? Where you can't take risks on, and that is your time. You can't take risks on your time. I would say you can't take risks on your future, and you can't take risks on your goals, right? And what I mean by that is we only get one life, right? This is all we have, this very moment right now, right? The time we have now is the most precious resource, and there ain't any more of it. So, you know, and like we've all got friends, and when I see people that are just not, every day you should give it your absolute best. That, obviously, there are times when you're tired and not feeling too great, and that's fine. But genuinely, if you're not giving it the best you can every day, then you're basically taking a risk on your time and your future and your goals. And I don't think you can afford to do that. So when I see people just like wasting their life and procrastinating, saying, yeah, one day I'm going to get my life in order and all this, they're taking huge, you know, I've seen people waste 2 decades just tossing it off, and they've not even, they're so far behind, they've not even started. And I just think it's ridiculous. It's like, do you realize the stakes here on the time, your future, your goals, your time on this earth are the biggest stakes? Like, yeah, I would say your life is worth more, but after that, what you do with your life, that to me is worth more than your house, worth more than your job, worth more than anything. To not achieve your goals is very high stakes, and I think, in my opinion, that's where you should focus if you're not doing, because you're just letting yourself down. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's it. I didn't, you know, didn't really realize this for a while, but not taking action, allowing things to go, you know, the whole wait until January before you start the gym thing, all that, it's just absolute nonsense. You should, like I said in a video the other day, a great analogy sums this up. It's the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. And I think this is where, even right now, if you know, rather than procrastinating, if you've not took action towards your future and your goals, right, you're just wasting your time on this earth, and that is a risk you can't afford. Those stakes are high. You cannot afford to risk it. There's also, I've just wrote down something here now. There's something, when you take a risk, right, which I'm a massive fan on, especially like if it's something that, because in life we have to make decisions, right? Even not making a decision is also taking a decision, because what not making a decision, sitting idly, is taking a risk on the time you have, the limited time you have on this earth. So that is also making a decision, right? You're risking your time and your future and your goals. But when we make a decision, what actually happens is choosing anything means not choosing something else, right? So you're saying yes to something and saying no to something else. So we have to do this, and in a lot of things in life, there are certain, there's things like booking a hotel for a holiday is like nothing. It's like, well, you've got so many options. It's like you're not limited, and it's such a small thing. But there are some things, the big decisions in life, like I said in a live stream last week, which were, sorry, not last week, I think it was the week before. The three things that don't teach you at school are finances. They teach you all about maths, English, but they don't teach you about finances, which is how to manage money, relationships, and looking after yourself, your health, right? So if you think about them three things, financially, how to manage money, they teach you maths, science, all that stuff, flipping physics. You can become the best, mathematician, but you can still be shit with what to do with money, how to invest it, how to understand things like economics, macroeconomics, just basic things like read some simple books. I just read a couple of books recently. One was Rob Moore, if you know him, from Progressive, the property guy. He's got a really good book. I also read another book by another Rob Dix, The Value of Money. That's a really good book on economics. And then there's a really good old book called Economics in One Lesson, it's called. It's on my reading list, andyholt.co.uk. If you go to resources, reading list, it's on there. I think it's Economics in One Lesson. Henry Harville, I can't remember. Anyway, just have a look there. There's a link there. That is a really good book. So when you're thinking about managing money, something they don't teach us in school, that you ought to learn about macroeconomics and learn things like how inflation works, how holding money basically is just a bad idea. You should copy the government and just go and borrow money. That is taking a risk, right? In context here, but think about how the economy works, right? I don't want to labour this point because there are three things that school don't teach you, but in terms of the economy, if you look at how the economy works, right, it used to be, we was all taught, save money, right? But the problem with saving money, holding cash, is the buying power gets worse the longer you hold it. Even if you hold it for 12 months in a savings account, the issue is the way that modern economies work. The governments across the world have all got like massive national debts, right? The UK, the US, they've all got big national debts. And the only way that what they do is the bonds, right? Government bonds. This is how they raise money to pay for these debts, get the money in. And the only way they can refinance that national debt is if the inflation is higher than the base rate of interest. So they need the inflation to be slightly higher, because when they come to give the money back on the bonds, it's worth less, right, than the inflation. So that, if you think about the logistics of it, if they give you a bond for £1 on year one, and for 10-year bond, and let's say they give you 5% each year as on the bond, so for giving them the bond as an interest, they need the inflation to be slightly higher to counteract the cost of that debt, the interest, so that when they take out, when they repay it in 10 years' time, that £1, they're giving you like less, it's then worth equivalent of 60p, right? Because of inflation, in terms of buying power, and then they can raise more money. And this is how it works, right? So you got to learn about money, the macroeconomics, all that kind of thing. The other one is obviously relationships. And the thing with relationships is, school don't teach us about relationships. There's always a risk here, because genuinely, unless you're spinning plates and got loads of people on the go and just casually dating, you tend to have, most people have like one romantic interest and move to another. You take a risk every time you move because you can only have one at a time, like I say, unless you're spinning plates and got loads on the go. That's the deal. So you've always got to take that risk. So like you might think it's huge, but that's the same again. You just got to calculate it. Is it right for you? All that kind of thing. And you can. One of the issues with taking risks is it's like you want to develop like a trader's mindset. Like a stock trader's mindset, because a good stock trader will not panic at the slightest fluctuation. They don't get all emotional about it. They just understand the market, and they just resist it. It's just like basic rules. It's like buy when everyone's selling, sell when everyone's buying. It's pretty basic, and kind of like I've got a bit of crypto at the minute, right? And I was saying the other day that like I risked a bit of money on crypto a few years ago. But I was in a good position, you know what I mean? It was money that I looked at and I thought, right, if I lose all this, is my life going to end? And it was like, no, right, I'll do it. And the reason why I did it is my cousin, Sim, she just said, oh, get some XRP, right? So I did. I trusted her and I thought, right, there's no way Sim would look at this without looking at, analysing it. She's so risk averse and tight with money. There's no way she wouldn't have researched this. So I went on her say so. I didn't really look into it myself, but I was in that position where it was like spare money. So I just put it on, and then what happened was it absolutely tanked. Right, it just went ugh, because there was some kind of court case in the US. And then recently, with like the new elections and things, and there's a lot of noise about that court case going away. The stocks have just gone, the crypto, particularly things like XRP, have just skyrocketed. So I've ended up making some money. Right? It went from like I'd invest some money, then it went, ugh, and I thought, oh. So I just thought, well, I'll just leave it. It's money, I prepared to risk at the time, because it was like, it wouldn't, it wasn't a lot compared to like, it wouldn't end my life. So I just thought, I'll risk that. It tanked. And I just said, I'm just going to leave it. And I left it. And eventually now it's on the up, and it's gone from like losing 50% to now 3 times what it was. And I think it's got a lot more to go. So the reason why I say that is I think relationships are very similar. Like we need to develop like a trader's mindset to them, right? Because if you think about taking a risk on a relationship, because a relationship is an emotional decision. Yeah, you could argue that historically, people used to choose partners more rationally, logically, like, it was all about like protection, keeping the family going. Is this person from a good family? Like arranged marriages were a good thing. They were all successful because they were thought through properly. They weren't an emotional decision. These days it's like, do we love the person? The problem with love is it's like fucking happiness. It comes and goes like the wind. It's not really got a permanent foundation, as like, whereas if you approach a relationship like an investment, like, is this person good for me? Yeah, you need the attraction, right? I'm not saying, if there's no spark, then that's it. You can't do anything. There's no amount of logical. I was talking to a friend about this, and no amount of logical rationalization why you should be, if you spend your time rationalizing why this person's good for you, eventually it'll catch you out. So you do need that spark, because it isn't an emotional decision. But once you get past that, so like, step 1, do you fancy this person? Right. That should just be, take you 30 seconds. It's like, yes, I do. Right, good. Next, what's the life like? Will it work logistically? you know, all that kind of, because obviously, like, you know, if that person lives in another country and you've no money to get there, then it's kind of, you know, no matter how much you love them, it's like logistically impossible. So you ought to approach that relationship, because I think things like relationships are a huge risk, because it's one of them decisions that could potentially impact you for 10 years or more, especially if you're thinking long term. You know, if it's short term and you're just casually dating, then you're not taking a risk really. You're avoiding a relationship, which is a form of avoidance. You know, if you think like casually dating is cool, no, it's that's playing relationships on easy mode. You're just avoiding relationships altogether. Stand up? What, what are you talking about? How can I stand up? You won't be able to see me. Anyway, so when you do take a relationship, I think you ought to have like a trader's mindset. Always be willing to walk away. You know what I mean? You need some kind of, call it red lines, boundaries. You know, you don't want to get disrespected. So always be willing to walk away. But everything else, take risks, I would say, but calculate them. It's like, you know, when you're doing if you like I do with the life harmony model, create a goal. So if all goals that you do, which is spending your time, which I've got, I always say I have about 3 or 4 goals, right? And make one of them a primary goal. And that'll tend to be something around work, work or business, because, you know, that's your kind of financial base. But even that is taking a risk. Like, you know, I'm just looking at mine here for finances. I've got 2 businesses. The things on here I'm risking my time doing. Like, I'm writing some tenders at the minute, and they can take a lot of effort, like a couple of weeks to write. And sometimes they're for big projects. When you write those tenders, you're wasting a lot of your time doing that. Well, not wasting, you're investing a lot of your time committing it to writing those tenders. So you need to pre-qualify them. And this is about looking at is it worth your time to spend filling out that tender for like 2 or 3 weeks, spending all your time doing it, trying to make it perfect, if you've not got a chance of winning that job? Or would your time be better spent, say, creating new marketing material or something like this? So that is an idea where, you know, this is why you create goals. And you know, you've got a plan. You're not like I always say, like every day, just earlier, I was out doing my journal, and you write down, 3 things I've got here now for today that I'm going to work on today. Right? One is about a tender that needs to go in tomorrow. So I've got 3 tenders to write. One's going in tomorrow. So I just need to check them. I've done my bits, just need to verify it all. Another one is about sales on markets and Amazon and this stuff. And then another one is more about my meditation, which I'm doing later with my coach. And they're the 3 things I'm going to work on. So every day, because I had that plan, work on 3 things a day towards my goals, that is not a risk. I'm in charge there. I've got goals and I'm working towards them consistently. Because you can't, like I say, a lot of times, no one can guarantee you success, right? Tomorrow is not promised to anyone, right? Tomorrow is not promised to anyone. Even you might not even be here. You might not make it until tomorrow. All you can do is do your best every day. Work on top 3 things a day. What 3 things do you need to do today towards your goals? Yeah. Don't risk the time on this earth procrastinating and messing around. Create some goals. Start working on what are the 3 things that I can do today. Right? You don't have to put a lot of time in. There might only be an hour's work, but every day you're gradually moving closer. And then you're not gambling with your time on this earth. which I don't think you can afford to do. That's honest opinion, you know. If you're procrastinating, you've got to stop it. Because if you're taking action, even small action every day, then you're not taking a risk on your time, using it wisely. And whilst no one can promise you, you can't guarantee success, all you can do is create the conditions for success. And in creating the conditions for success, by doing the right things every day, you actually make it more likely that you create the conditions for your own luck. Because you'll be in the right place at the right time because you're doing the right things. And that is the only way you get lucky. Because most people that get lucky, it's because they created the conditions for that luck. You know, so that's what you should do. Don't risk your time on this earth. Start creating a plan. Work towards 3 small things a day. And whilst you can't guarantee success, eventually it will come. And you'll be happier as well. You'll be living with intent. All right? Right, I'm going to shoot. I've got a bit of work to do. Right, so you have a good day. Go and get working on your goals and your top 3 things of the day. See you all next time.